Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Harry Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.
Glad you could join us here. Hopefully you are joining us and not messed up by daylight savings time here. It's also apparently National Nap Day, so hopefully you're up from that. There's a lot of national days. It's like 5 national days. It's also National Pack Your Lunch Day, so hopefully you did that. And it's National Mario Day. We've got Aaron in the studio with us. He's up from his nap. He's ready to go. My mom's in studio and warm today, which is weird because it's nice and sunny. And I'm getting word Rex has been sending me messages via Morse code. I think he's somewhere in the Atlantic on a cargo ship. That's what I was able, but I might have mixed up the messages. So I got to figure out his whereabouts. But I have a feeling he's trying to make contact here. But we'll get more news on him hopefully in the weeks to come. But we're going to get some news here from Jordan Orth. He covers the Red Wings for the HockeyWriters.com, and there's been a lot going on with the Red Wings, so we want to catch up with him. So welcome to the show, Jordan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's glad we could get you on here. We haven't had you on in a little bit, and it's a good timing to have you on because this team is it's like they are very consistent in the blocks that they have. They either have a win streak or a loss streak. It doesn't seem like they go back and forth very often. They get on these runs, and it just seems like they're a little tired to me. They've expended a lot of energy going on these runs. McClellan has gotten them going, but then they had Four Nations. Not everybody obviously participated in Four Nations, but there was a lot expended there, and it just seems like they're a little bit out of gas. Is that how it seems to you?
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on with that. Like you said, with the Four Nations, especially with Larkin and Raymond, they kind of came back and looked a little flat, and McClellan kind of called his guys out for the way they came back and played, which something they need once in a while, you know. But yeah, it's almost been a roller coaster ride all season. Like you said, it's not like it's 2 on, 2 off type of thing with the win-loss situation. It's massive streaks, and they're kind of in that lull right now that they kind of need to snap out of pretty quick.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. They were just so far behind the proverbial 8 ball with the beginning of the season. If you take the time that McClellan was there, they've had a very strong record overall, and you are going to have, naturally, just because of the laws of averages and the ebbs and flows of the season, if you are a team that has 2 7-game win streaks like they do since McClellan got there, it's natural to have maybe 4 or 5 losses in a row every once in a while too, as long as it doesn't counteract the whole win streak. But their record is still very good since he's gotten there, but it just seems like with everything, they've had to expend a lot of energy in a limited amount of time. Plus, that's been kind of compounded by the injuries and the losses, it seems like, too.
Yeah, you're dead set or 100% right on that one. I mean, you lose guys like Comper, and then you lose, there was a Cop, sorry, whichever one that was, can't remember right offhand. But you lose him, and then you have Rasmussen go down for the little bit he's been out. And then mixed in with some spotty play from some of the other guys, it's like you said, it's kind of compounded all at one time right now, and it's kind of wake up or you're not going to be going very far the rest of the year type of deal at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was Cop that got injured, and although I know he's sometimes under the X with fans, I think he is a key player on the team. As far as, especially, he's like a coach out there. I think he was voted, I think it was Kopp that was voted the most likely to turn into a coach after his career and everything. And yeah, just the depth is becoming an issue. They've got a lot of young guys, and they've got a lot of guys in the pipeline, but that doesn't necessarily help them right now.
Right. I mean, you still got to let those kids. Eiserman's been known to do it. I mean, Holland did it before him with letting those kids earn their stripes down in Grand Rapids or wherever they're playing at. And that, like you said, the depth is definitely coming into effect. I mean, it's no different than you look at the Lions with the injuries during their season. It eventually came back to get them at some point. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it just catches up with you. It was funny. It was like everybody kind of gave that excuse for a while, and then when the Lions were able to weather the storm, it was like people were saying, "Oh well, but they can handle it. Oh, next man up." All of those kinds of catchphrases. But eventually, like you said, it does get you. There's attrition involved. Then those guys that aren't used to that level of conditioning are forced into more minutes. Same with the Wings right now. Guys are taking longer shifts. They're having to play in different alignments than they're used to. They're having to play more. All of those kinds of things. So it does make it tougher. Now, I wanted to cover the trade deadline with you because this is the first time we're talking Wings since the deadline, and they had an interesting deadline because they were kind of in a unique position. They're making a play for the playoffs because of the winning streaks since McClellan took over, but they're still in a very competitive wild card chase. It seemed obvious to most people. I know you guys at the Hockey Writers were under this impression, and pretty much all the writing that I was reading, and from what I was seeing the same thing. It seemed obvious that they needed some defense help with the injuries, with that being a potential weakness during the season here. And they didn't really get it, yet so I was wondering what you think of the trade, because instead of getting defense, they traded Veleno, which I can kind of see from the Red Wings side, but in turning him into assets makes sense because it hasn't really worked out here so far. But I was really hoping those assets would be a defender. Instead, it was an older forward and a goalie, which it gets us closer to the all goalie lineup that I've been talking about all year, because they just keep acquiring goalies. So if they're going to go with all goalies and just have goalie chaos, then I'd love to see that. I don't think it would work well, but it just would be fun. But I don't know why we're getting kind of another goalie for the rotation here.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem was that you look at some of the trades around the league and the value that teams were getting for players that they were giving up. I mean, you saw like middle of the bottom six guys getting second-round picks and trades, and I think Geiserman had mentioned it in his post-trade deadline press conference that he didn't want to mortgage or give up assets for players that he didn't know or feel that he'd be able to re-sign. And adding Mrazek does kind of – it was a confusing move just based on the fact that, for one, he's been statistically one of, if not the worst goalie since the middle of December. But bringing in Craig Smith, he's not going to do you a whole lot on the offensive side, but he's going to bring you that depth that they're kind of lacking. But yeah, not adding a defenseman with the issues they've had all year kind of was a head scratcher for obviously a lot of us.
Well, and that in juxtaposition with the other trade that kind of impacted them, or was a butterfly effect that was first caused by them, I thought was interesting, because you had Wallman that was dealt again, and they got a lot more. So that was just interesting to me, because that's a defensive player that they traded seemingly for cap reasons. They kind of unloaded him. Basically, he was a negative asset in that trade. Then the Sharks end up trading him again, and then get a first-round pick for him. That whole exchange doesn't reflect so well on the initial transaction from the Wings.
No, it definitely does not. That was one of those moves that makes you kind of, I don't want to say question or second guess what Eiserman's whole thought process was on the trade, but at the same time it does. I mean, you have a guy like Wallman. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the season when I talked with you. He's a guy that in the locker room everybody liked, everybody in the town liked, and him and Sider made a real good pairing last year when they were paired up together. So you do that, and then you can't really replace them with anything you've got on the roster that you went out and got. You're right. You circle back to it, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a move you really shouldn't have made, looking at it in hindsight now.
Well, and I know we were a little confused. I mean, I think there were cap reasons like we're talking about, and in different things, but it seemed like maybe they were planning another move that then never happened. I don't know if that was maybe a trade that didn't end up working out. Obviously, there's a lot of things that we don't know that aren't happening, so it's hard to tell. Maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, we'll hear about how they were in the mix for one of these guys, and maybe they thought they had him, and so they were trying to get rid of Wallman to clear some space. But then it was like, oh, at the deadline, Wallman got moved again for a first-round pick, and then you look at the Wings and you're like, oh, that's actually probably who they need right now. They need a Wallman, and they had him on the roster at the beginning of the season.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's someone that you look at and see what he. I mean, even in his first couple of games with Edmonton, he's made a difference from the back end. Again, you throw him. You got Edmondson and Seider on the back. You've got Johansson, who's played better, but you throw a Wallman back in that lineup, either him or even someone like Gostisbehere after letting him walk and signing Eric Gustafsson. You look at how the two have played and the kind of the contracts. It's like, okay, well, you could have had either Gostisbehere or Wallman in that spot, and you probably would be better off with what you've got.
Oh, yeah, especially because that's been exposed as somewhat of a weakness. And I like the idea of having Wallman because for all the reasons that you were saying, but I would root for Gostisbehere just because I really liked how Ken Daniels says Gostisbehere. That's my favorite one. That and Oli Mata. Those are those are the favorites that he says for me anyway.
Yeah, they definitely. Him and Mickey are always the good ones to listen to throughout the season. They've got between Mickey and his Mickeyisms and Ken with his all-around great announcing to begin with. They got one of the best pairs in the league for sure.
Oh yeah, Ken Daniels. He's a lot of fun to listen to. But yeah, the names are not as fun anymore that he gets to say. So I want those two guys back just for that. Or I mean, there's some fun names in hockey. You and I both know this. So I want to have some acquisitions based on, if we're not going to pick up guys that are going to help the team, then let's at least have some fun names or have the all goalie lineup. Like, let's go one direction or the other. Let's make the team better, or let's lean into, hey, we're just going to have fun out there.
Yeah, you gotta have it one way or the other. You gotta entertain the fans one way or the other with it. So
exactly, yeah, and hopefully they'll be entertained by a run here. They still have it in them. Now with I was hoping that we'd have a trade that would say, okay, I can see how this would improve the team, and maybe this will be the lift that they need. But yeah, I don't see them. I don't know how much Mrazek's gonna factor into the rotation, and so I don't know how that's going to help. Like you said, he was scuffling a bit here before this, and then Smith will be a depth guy, and he's an established forward, but I don't know if those are the bodies they need to make this push here.
Right. I mean, you look at Smith, he's probably going to more or less fill the Christian Fischer role, which sucked to see him get picked up by Columbus, obviously, with them being in the playoff hunt, battling with the Wings. And, I mean, he's a guy that it seems everybody liked in the room, and, again, kind of like Wallman was one of those fan favorite guys, but they definitely I mean, it all starts tonight against Ottawa. If you lose tonight against them, I mean, you're 3 points back on them. You lose tonight, you put yourself even farther behind the 8 ball trying to catch up to them for that second spot. You got to straighten. It starts tonight. It sucks to say it's a must win, but it's a must win at this point.
Well, especially with the games that they've lost now, they're if you go on a losing streak like this, you're turning yourself into a must-win situation, and that's why we have Jordan on at 7, so he can watch the game at 7:30. So be sure to catch that as well after the show. Catch up on that for all the rest of you. But we're going to talk to Jordan about a couple of his articles. I want to talk about his recent article on the young guys in the system, because there are a lot of young guys to focus on as we go here. So we'll talk to him after the break about the young guys in the Red Wings system. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Happy to come back here with Jordan Orth of thehockeywriters.com. Jordan's got to be sure to check him and the rest of the guys, Devin and Tony, and the guys out on the Hockey Writers. They do great stuff there. And I want to talk about a couple of the articles you have, Jordan, because you've got one focusing on the young guys, which we always like on this show, especially if there's we did this with the Tigers last year, and then they actually went on a run, but we found guys that cover the minor league system, and so we were doing that, and then they happened to go on that playoff run. Hopefully that's what happens with the Red Wings this year. But you got two good articles out there, recent ones. You've got a bunch of them, but the two most recent are the young guys and the number one. So I want to talk about both of those. But, yeah, tell us about some of these young guys that are sticking out to you in the system here, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, you got your big names. You got your Axel Sandin Pellica, who just broke the SHL goal record for a U20 player. You got your Kosa, who's down in Grand Rapids. But you got guys that some people might not know just from being a general fan, like Emmett Feeney. I mean, he's a late round pick from 2023 who's playing in the Western Hockey League in Canada, and he's been lighting it up this year for Kamloops. I mean, the kid's a stud right now, so his development's really taken a big jump this year. He's been tasked with a little bit more, seeing his roster's a little bit on the weaker side, but the kid stepped up, and he's one of those guys that could end up making the jump at the end of this season. If they don't make the playoffs for the Western Hockey League, he might make the jump to Grand Rapids, it sounds like. So it might be someone that Griffins fans might get to know a little bit before the end of the season. So he's definitely someone that I've been able to watch a little bit more of. So he's been a fun one to watch.
Yeah, and that's one reason I like to keep an eye on these guys. The Griffins are a sponsor of one of the other sports shows on the network here, the Sports Project, the Wednesday show, and so we like to follow them here. They're a good partner for us, and yeah, it's good hockey here. It's a nice thing to be able to watch. And see, this is what I'm talking about, Jordan. The Kamloops Blazers. Now that's a name. That's a good name.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely a fun one to get off the tongue.
Yeah, I don't know what a Kamloop is, but I'll skip over that, I guess. But yeah, that seems like a good prospect here, forward that could be scoring a lot here. How about some of these other guys on the? I see a Griffin on the list. I know I've heard this name a lot here in Grand Rapids, Mr. Lombardi.
Yeah, he's been a fun one to watch. I'm originally from Flint, so I got to see him play quite a bit when he was with the Firebirds before he got drafted. And this kid, he's an energizer bunny when he's on the ice. He's always fun to watch, and just seeing him come back from his injury and with the team kind of scuffling when he got back, the energy that he brought back to the lineup, it's been fun to watch. He's one of those guys that again, kind of the common fans like, well, he's a speedy guy, he's good, but it's what the little details he does on the ice that is going to help him take himself from the Griffins to hopefully eventually to the Wings here, if he can continue to develop his game and keep doing what he's doing, basically.
Yeah, and that's been interesting. So obviously there's a lot of young guys in this system in various ranks. There's a few at the major league level. We talked about Raymond. That's why I was hoping Raymond wouldn't show it quite as much because of his youth, but that is a lot of games for him and Larkin. Larkin's obviously got a few years on him, but he's budding into a young superstar. But your description kind of sounds like, because I feel like that's what's happened with Casper at the NHL level. Like he's getting a lot of attention on him by the little things that he's doing. He's still putting up the points and doing a lot of things, but I feel like when you I like listening to Ken and Mickey, as we referenced, but when you listen to the other broadcasts and ESPN and some of the other carriers of the games, they always seem to focus on Casper in those games. So he's clearly getting a lot of eyes. So I like to hear that about a guy like Lombardi, because those soft skills are often what sustain you and get you elevated up to the higher levels.
Right. I mean, that's how Casper ended up playing on that top line. And like you said, the national media, even watching like the Stadium Series game on ESPN, like you said, they're sitting there talking about him. Yeah, you'll get the guys like Larkin and Kane that they talk about, but hearing a kid again that does the little things, that gets in the corners, goes to the front of the net, does the things that set up guys like Larkin or Raymond for a goal or whatever. That's, like you said, that's what you need and what's going to get you longevity in the NHL to begin with.
Well, and this fits our theme because this is on both levels here, Jordan, because now he does seem like a good player. I've been hearing about him all season here in Grand Rapids, and then we hear about him on the Red Wings broadcast as well. But his name's Amadeus Lombardi. I mean, that's going to be a fun name for Ken to say. I can't wait to hear him say that 20 times a game here. So that fits our list. But so I see on this on the list of the young guys here, you've got another goalie. We don't have enough goalies, so good thing we have another one in the pipeline.
Yeah, add it to the lineup. We'll be all right. But yeah, I mean, Rudy Gaumont, he's kind of one of those. He's going to be that next tier down from your Trey Augustines or Costa. He may not ever make an impact on the NHL. He might end up in Grand Rapids for whenever he turns pro. But he's one of those kids that he kind of benefited from the whole. He's definitely one of them that's going to benefit from the NCAA CHL agreement that players can go on to college after they age out, because he was playing in the USHL before he decided that, this isn't working out. I'm going to go play major junior over in Canada, and the kid's been on a tear. He hadn't lost a game in 12 times he had been out when I wrote that article, and he's just been a stud for Moncton for the last couple of months. So, I mean, he's not probably going to be someone that's going to be an NHL starter, but he's going to be one of them organizational depth guys who could fill in Grand Rapids or Toledo or a spot start whenever for the Wings at some point. So.
And obviously I'm being sarcastic about the goalie thing because it's really kind of true. You never really can have too many goalies, especially the young guys. But that's what's kind of interesting when you look at. I hadn't heard of this guy before you had the write up, but obviously I know about Augustine and Kosa, and it's just interesting to look at the goalies as a whole, because now you got Mrazek in the mix, and you've got basically 5 goalies that are either going to be kind of at the NHL level or in the pipeline to be future starters / rotational goalies. You got Kosa and Augustine in that role, and then the 3 main ones, Lyons, Talbot, and Mrazek now kind of in the main roster, however they end up splitting those guys up. And it's just strange because there's really been nothing. I'm interested in your take on this, but the goalie play hasn't been the problem, certainly, but it hasn't necessarily been their number one strength either. And it's tough because Talbot's been pretty consistent. Lyon hasn't been bad at times, but then you've got these 2 young guys that could exceed them eventually, but obviously they're not ready yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, Augustine, you look at his numbers at Michigan State. He's been a big part of them turning that program into what they are now. Yeah. I mean, Kosa, he's close to being an NHL ready goaltender, and I think that was part of why Yzerman went out and got someone like Mrazek to begin with, because he's got an extra year on his contract just in case Kosa doesn't or isn't prepared or ready for the NHL next year, which may happen and may not. And Yzerman wanted to get out in front of the goalie market, knowing that, okay, well, if I want a guy like this next year, it's going to cost me more than what he's making. Yeah, I think you look at Augustine and Kosa, they're definitely guys that are going to take over that spot, but I think they're still probably at least a couple of years away.
Oh yeah, and that's obviously part of the whole. That's where the team planning aspect comes in with the trade deadline, because I get that people wanted them to make more significant moves because that's always what the fans want. I think we would have been happy with just kind of a defenseman that kind of fit within the lines somewhere. It didn't even have to be a top level guy, but a depth guy that could fit in the rotation pretty well. Not aiming that high, but they're trying to not mortgage the future here, and I understand that because the future looks bright with this team. I mean, they've got a couple older guys. You mentioned Kane, Larkin's still going strong, and he's looking like that leader of the future that hopefully will be able to have several more good years and kind of be the veteran guy when all these young guys come up. But they're just caught right in the middle, and they're so close to getting to the playoffs. Obviously, they were a point away last year, and it's kind of gearing up to be very similar this year.
Yeah, that's kind of what the path looks like we're going down. And, I mean, you look at even the strength of schedule that the Wings have. They have the hardest strength of schedule to finish the season. So you got to really ramp it up and get get the the cobwebs off, whatever you got to do, get them legs moving and get the energy back in there. And yeah, bringing in a player that could have helped spur that energy uptick again would have been nice. But like you said, mortgaging the future, just Eiserman's made it very well known he's not going to skip steps and all this. And like you said, as much as fans wanted something to happen, he's made it very well known he's going to do it his way, and that's just it. So.
Yeah, and he's on the right path. I mean, this trade deadline didn't go the best, especially with the Wallman piece, but that the team still has a lot of people in the system, which you highlighted in your article. And I encourage, we don't have time for it today, but I encourage people to check out that number article, because Jordan goes through and ranks the top players from the Red Wings at every number and says the best one to ever wear that jersey, which Mickey Redmond would love that, because he brings that up all the time on air. So that you got to send that one to Mickey. But tell people where they can find you. It's thehockeywriters.com and then the podcast as well, right, Jordan?
With the podcast, we don't do the podcast right now. We're kind of on a hiatus with that. But the website's just thehockeywriters.com, or you can follow me on Twitter it's just at Jordan Orth, and check out my articles right there.
Perfect. Yeah, it's great stuff there. Check out him and Tony Wolak and Devin Little, who have all been on the show. They do a great job covering the Wings, and we appreciate you coming on here and covering them for us, Jordan.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have you back soon. Thanks. All right, thanks to Jordan Orth. Great job covering the Wings there. He's going to go watch the game, I imagine. But stay here. Don't go and watch the game quite yet. We've got Jerry Mckinnen coming on from Tigers ML Report to talk about the young Tigers here who are surging through spring training. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're going to turn our attention from Red Wings to Tigers here. We were talking about the young Red Wings, but now it's time to talk the young Tigers, and there's no better group to do that with than the Tigers minor league report. We had Rogelio on 2 weeks ago. We had Chris Brown on last week, and now we're happy to welcome Jerry Mckinnen back on the show here. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Yeah, this is where it all started. Now I've had a lot of interviews with the Tigers ML Report. I've got the shirt. I didn't wear it today. It's in the wash from wearing it last week. But I be sure to check out their gear and all their reporting there, because they do a great job. But yeah, I was having trouble finding people to cover the Tigers for us, and then I found you guys, and then I didn't want anybody else to cover it. I just wanted you guys.
That sounds great. I won't argue with that.
Yeah,
we love coming on.
Yeah, and you guys have connected me with other guys. We've had Brandon Day on as well from Bless You Boys. He does a great job, and there's a lot of good folks in this market. And I know you kind of team up with him as well. But yeah, this is a good time to talk to you guys, because we're getting the season kicked off, and I've brought this issue to the other two guys. I know that the top 40 quote unquote list was an amalgamation of the three of you guys, of Chris, Rogelio, and you, and so that's why it's 46. But I told the other two guys this, so I'm going to start out here with you, Jerry. I'm not 46. Just it's not working as well for me. Could you just get to 50? Let's just push it to 50.
Yeah, next time we'll each submit 70 names or so, and then we'll get the list of the nice even 50 for you.
Perfect. Yeah, it's usually 40. That's what I'm referring to, and now it's 46. But it's a great list, and what's fun about this list, I want to get your takes on it, because we got them from both Chris and Rogelio, the other two that contribute to it. But it's amazing to me, and I know this is how baseball works, but this seems more varied to me. It's just amazing how. So you got guys from different levels, different ages, of course, different draft statuses, but it's amazing how varied it is. You would think it would be a little bit more linear, where the guys in the back would be kind of, okay, they're lower in the system, but some of these guys that are on the top of the list are already on the major league level, have already seen action, and then you've got guys that are down here in West Michigan, so we're going to have to check them out because they're here in our local market. And it's just wild, the variety of the locations of these guys, especially even in the top 10.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it says a lot to the depth that they finally have in the minor league system, which is something that I don't remember them having ever. But, to your point, like 3 of my top 5 are all going to probably start in West Michigan. So there's a lot of youngsters that we can look forward to contributing to the big league team here in the near future.
Definitely. So are the three then that are here in West Michigan, is that McGonigal, Clark, and Lorenzo?
It's that. So it's actually Briseño.
Oh, it is Briseño. Okay, I was between those two. I wasn't sure which one to guess.
I'm making the assumption Briseño is going to be in West Michigan. So that he isn't officially there yet, but I'm thinking he probably will be.
Well, and they're a sponsor here for the station, and I talk a decent amount with Jim Jarecki, one of the VPs there, and he's excited. You can tell. You definitely want to get out early with the Whitecaps, because I have a feeling, and this is true most years with the minor leagues, but I have a feeling the roster is going to be quite different from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
Right. I completely agree. I would not be surprised if we saw two, maybe even all three of them eventually getting moved to Erie before the season ends. So it's going to look very, very different, and it's going to come quick.
Oh, yeah, and we're trying to get tentacles into kind of all the minor leagues here. Obviously, we've got you guys, and that's gotten me kind of hooked into it. And then we've got Greg Gagne coming on the show soon. I think he might be next week. And then we've got Dan Hasty that's in the queue, and he'll be coming on, the Whitecaps play-by-play guy. So it's fun to cover all that, because, this is where there's a ton of talent. But the main roster obviously doesn't have a dearth of talent either. But it's nice because I know people were kind of disappointed. Some people were disappointed by not getting Bregman, but when I talked to Jim Jarecki about the possibility of spending money, this is before free agency started, he was basically saying, hey, I don't want him to, you got to shore up some positions, but I don't want him to spend anything. We've got too many guys in the hopper that need a spot, and we just need to move them up, and that is becoming true with third base there. Hopefully somebody like Jung can come in and take over that third base slot.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a couple of guys. Young comes to mind, and Hao-Yu Lee is another one to keep an eye on. He's really, his name has shot up the ranks everywhere, it seems like. He's catching a lot of people's attention, and he seems like he could play it, and he's got an incredible bat.
I feel like if we had a bingo card, you have to put Hao-Yu Lee in the middle for all the Tigers ML Report interviews, because it comes up. It doesn't matter what question I ask. He comes up like within 5 minutes. So I am really excited about Hao-Yu Lee. I don't know a lot about him except what you guys have told me about him. I have seen him a couple times in spring training because I've watched a lot of the games. But it's funny because it's just that is like you. That is your guys' guy, I feel like, this year. I feel like before that was it maybe like Colt Keith or Meadows or something, and now it's Hao-Yu Lee, because those guys are up on the major league roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, not to brag, but I think we were some of the first ones in on Colt Keith and just how good he really could be, and we made note of Parker Meadows had made some swing changes that really seemed to do good for him, and now Hao-Yu Lee is our the one we're pushing again. Yeah, and that's one thing to note. I'm busting Jerry's chops about mentioning Hao-Yu Lee, but that's why you got to listen to these guys, because they will give you an indication of where these guys are at before they become big names. Because when you say, oh, well, I haven't heard of that guy, well, if you follow these guys, you will have heard of them, because I've improved my knowledge of the system tenfold by watching their writing and material and stuff. So we always get to Hao-Yu Lee. So this is a question I need to ask you, Jerry, because I didn't ask it of Chris or Rogelio. Who's after that? Who are some of the other guys that you're watching? I know we talked about guys like, I know some of the hot button names are like a Max Clark or a McGonigal. They're both here in West Michigan, but are there other guys that you kind of have your eye on in the system? Yeah, so there's three guys in Lakeland right now that I'm going to be really keeping an eye on this coming year, and they, depending on how they do down there, they could even see some time in West Michigan towards the end of the season. There's the shortstop for Nierber Montilla. He's a really slick defender. He's got a pretty good bat. He was very young for the competition and seemed to hold his own, especially towards the end of the season and into the playoffs. another one is Nomar Fana. He is an outfielder who is also, he tends to strike out more, but he has so much power in his bat that he could really do some damage to the baseball. And then there's Rainer Castillo. He is a starting pitcher down there, and he did fantastic in Lakeland, especially for his age. His slider, for instance, got a 42.6% whiff rate on 108 swings, which is incredible. Even for younger guys who might be swinging at it more, that's really, really impressive. So those are the three names I would kind of keep an eye on.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I know it's just hard to pick at this point, but I did hear you bring up an outfielder. That's going to be kind of a focus here for the Tigers with the injuries that they've had. Who do you see being where do you kind of see them going with this? I know Jones has been a bit of a revelation so far. I know it's been spring training, but man, has he stuck out regardless of position so far.
Oh yeah, he's been very impressive. I wouldn't complain if they wanted him up there as the fourth outfielder. It's very unfortunate that they've seemingly lost Meadows and Perez for a somewhat long period of time in the spring, so they're going to be short. I would guess they're probably going to roll with Carpenter and Green in the corner spots, and then maybe Jones has pushed his way up there. I mean, he's looked really good this spring. Yeah,
I know that's a focus here. Obviously, having some depth in the outfield, given that they've lost some guys, like you mentioned, for a while. But man, he seemed like he was pushing for a spot, kind of regardless the way he's been playing, because there's a few guys that have stuck out. I feel like has played very well, and I know people were kind of split on this guy, but the acquisition of Torres, I know it's not the regular season yet, but he's looked pretty sharp in spring training. I think he just needed the beard. I think that was the problem.
That's what it is. That brings all the magic for him, right?
Yeah, it's funny. He's got a nice tight beard. But what is with? I'm gonna cover this more with you in the second segment. But I mean, I don't think they have a razor in the bullpen, right? Because you've got, so Jerry does a good job. We're going to cover this more in the second segment, but he does a good job with these profiles of different players, and one of them is Tyler Owens, who I've had my eye on, and I like watching him pitch. He's a smaller guy, but he's got a lot of power. But he's like Chewbacca out there. He's just all hair. You can't even. That's why you can't read a pitch. All you're seeing is hair.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it leads into the deception, right? You're so focused on the hair moving around during his windup that you don't see the ball coming.
I mean, for a group like pitchers where they're so focused on that little micro advantage that they can get, just a little bit of substance on the ball where they're grabbing their hat or they're grabbing, they're trying to get any kind of tact. I feel like that would be a tactic there to say, hey, like, yeah, good luck paying attention to this white rotating orb when you have to see 12 inches of hair and a ZZ Top beard.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, maybe they should bleach it all too so it blends in with the baseball a little better.
That's a good plan. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you could use color. They're not using color correctly there, right. Or you could have like a rainbow one and then just throw everybody off because you've got like a whole Roy G. Biv thing going and you've got too
exactly.
many colors. Yeah, we're on to something. We got to take a break quick, but we're going to think about this in the break and more ideas of how to style the Tigers to make them better. But we're also going to cover some of Jerry's reports here on the prospects because those are fun, in-depth reports here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're back here with Jerry Mckinnen of Tigers Minor League Report. We're doing some good brainstorming here, Jerry. I feel like we've got some good ideas going, but I do want to talk about Owens because hair aside, whirlwind of hair aside, he's an interesting pitcher. You guys highlighted him in the top 46 prospects, but man, he tips the scales at 185. He's only 5'10", but he gets a lot of power with that delivery there.
Oh yeah, he hits mid 90s with his fastballs. He'll touch the upper 90s even. It's it's a really good pitch. He actually throws a fastball, a four-seam fastball, and a sinker, and they move similar, but they break differently at the end there. And he can tunnel them really good, so the hitter's not sure which one they're going to get. So you can really trip them up with it.
Well, that's such a key in pitching, because having something that looks like it's kind of the same arm slot, same pitch, but then breaks different ways is a key. Because yeah, you're sitting on something else and then it breaks a different way. You're gonna be whiffing big time up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so you're the first guy. I'm sure you're not the only guy to compare him to this guy, but I'm surprised I haven't heard this on the broadcast yet. He's been pitching a lot. He's seen a lot of action in spring training, which seems to be a good sign. But I am surprised I have not. You refer to him in the article. I have not heard the name Tim Lincecum come up when I've seen him in spring training, and maybe I've just missed it. But I feel like it should come up every time.
Yeah, it was the tail end of his windup. His throwing arm, he puts it straight down and almost behind him. And when I was watching, I was like, man, that just reminds me of Tim Lincecum. So why, I'll throw it in there so people can get a good idea of what it looks like. It's like he's trying to hide the ball, and the hitters aren't seeing it nearly as good. It was interesting to watch him do that. It's a great move by him.
Well, and you have a much better mind for this stuff than I do, but that's like the very first thing. As soon as I saw him pitch, I was like, he threw the first pitch, and I was thinking to myself, man, this guy reminds me of Tim Lincecum. And then I just hadn't heard anybody else bring that up, and that was surprising to me, because we're seeing some other broadcasts. I usually like the Tigers broadcast, and I watch it because they have very good people that do it. I like Benetti. I like Greg, who I know is buddies with you guys. I like Dan Dickerson a lot. And so I'll watch that broadcast as much as I can. But in the preseason here in the spring training, they're getting some of the games from Yas Network, like the game this afternoon. And so you're listening to some of the other guys, which is fine. But then you get to hear what the other broadcasters think, and a lot of that stuff seems kind of aggregated, where they'll say like the same thing about the same guy every time, where they, like, I've heard the stat about them having a 0.2% chance in early August or whatever last year. They have the same kind of book of stats that go around, but nobody's compared him to Lincecum, and that blows my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting, It's kind of funny what we can see when we watch him repeatedly, and like for me going back and watching some of the tapes as I'm writing up the report, it's like an epiphany when you suddenly see that and you think, oh yeah, that reminds me exactly of this. This is so cool, and then you hope it kind of catches on. Hope somebody else notices. So I'm glad to hear that you thought the same thing.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. And then I brought up your article. I'm like, okay, somebody else is seeing this that actually knows what they're talking about here. But yeah, especially that slight build and all of that stuff. But I know you've got, so that's one of the reports you've got up here. You've got two others. You've got one for Elizer Alfonso, who I believe you mentioned earlier, and Jake Holton. Are you planning on doing one for all 46?
We are doing one for all 46. Yeah, we're all kind of taking a couple players here. I think Rogelio did a whole bunch of them, got them published. Chris has done a bunch of them. We have another one, Ashley. She's done a fantastic job of writing some of the pictures up, and so we all kind of are trying to take our portion and get them in there and get them out, so that way everybody can read exactly what we think and why we have this player where we have them.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good way to go through it. Yeah, I'm hoping to maybe have Ashley on the show. I've got to reach out to her. I'm having Joe on, I think, either next week or the week after. So we're trying to get to all the minor league report folks here that we can.
Awesome. Yeah, Joe's great too. He does that fantastic weekly report of the 5 stuff we like, and it's a great read. I love it every time he gets it posted.
Yeah, it's a nice way because it's still in depth, but at least it summarizes, because if you want to get in depth, you can't get more in depth than these guys. Then read their articles, and Jerry does some of the most in depth stuff. He talks about a lot of like hitting charts and pitching charts and different mechanisms of calculating things that most people can't understand. And you were in the process, I think, of inventing one the last time we talked. I don't want you to, again, we don't want you to give away any trade secrets, but weren't you working on something like that you were trying to have kind of a statistic that was going to help you measure things?
I was, yes. It's been out for a little bit now. So we talk about how we want to see our hitters hit the ball hard. And sometimes we don't necessarily see the results from that. And I always use Spencer Torkelson in 2013, the first half of the season. He was hitting the ball extremely hard, right up there with some of the best in the league, but he just wasn't getting the results. So I was trying to put together a metric that would show both how good they were at hitting the ball hard and also getting the results. So it kind of helped to even it out some, show guys like Torkelson that first half that while it may not have looked good, it was actually better than we realized.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and that's a big name here this year. They've talked about him some. It's been interesting to watch his. I feel like there's an intent to not really put too much pressure on him because clearly he felt that pressure last year. But Torkelson has looked good so far. It looks like he's connecting pretty well. He's swinging well, and he doesn't look like he's too phased, and he looks healthy out there. How's he looked to you so far here, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see him do as well as he has, if for no other reason than to build up his confidence and get the second half of 2023 back. I had noticed that he's already had 3 home runs, which is more than all the other spring trainings he's had combined. And hopefully he can keep this up, because they could really use another power bat in that lineup.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's going to be a big key. I know, just with general development of the players, because they're kind of in an interesting spot. They had the hot run last year at the end that everybody focuses on, rightfully so, and that gives you a lot of reason to believe this year, especially because I think most people would say the roster is objectively better this year. Plus, it's still fairly young, so most of the guys should be better. There should be hardly anybody that's getting worse. That doesn't always hold, but as far as age and progression, most of these guys should be better from last year with all the coaching they've received and the momentum that they got last year, building on that playoff run. That's always very important for the development of a team. But Torkelson seems like that guy that now that the expectation is lower, that maybe he can, because last year it was like, okay, we don't know about these other guys. We weren't really talking about the guys that we were by the end of the season. You guys were, but most people weren't talking about like Meadows and Colt Keith and some of those other guys, that Kerry Carpenter, that came in and helped with the surge at the end of the season. There was one name or a couple names that everybody's focusing on. Green had a great year, but Torkelson was one of the main ones. And now that they're talking about a lot of other names, I'm hoping that lack of attention will lead to him shining again here.
Yeah, that'd be great. And maybe that's what he needs is less attention on him, so then he's not quite as in his head and he's able to focus just on the game and do what he can do best.
Well, because there are some players that are like this. I'm not thinking of a baseball guy off the top of my head, but the guy that is, you're the one that invents metrics and stuff, so we'd have to think of a name for this. But the guy that's best at exceeding expectations, but then doesn't do as well with exceeded expectations, to me, is Baker Mayfield, because at every level before he got to the NFL, he was underrated in high school. He did very well there. Then he walked on in college. He did very well there. People didn't think he was going to be a top prospect. Then he worked his way up the draft board to number one. Then he started out pretty well. He got the injury that factored in, but the pressure kind of got to him. He went down to the bottom, and then once the expectations then flipped to the bottom, then all of a sudden he was exceeding them again. And I'm hoping that same concept will apply to Torkelson, because that is a lot of pressure, especially for a young guy, to say, hey, you're the next guy for this franchise. Some guys do get power from that, but some guys get crushed under that. It's kind of like making a diamond or dust. So I'm hoping, I'm thinking he can emerge this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've seen what he can do. You know, you don't just by chance hit 30 home runs in a season. That requires some sort of talent to be able to do that. So fingers crossed. We'll keep our fingers crossed that he can bring that back and look fantastic again.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of other guys. He just has to be one of the guys. He doesn't have to be
Exactly.
the guy, and that's a big change this year. So yeah, we're excited to watch the Tigers this season, and you guys are definitely going to help us cover them. So we appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Jerry. All right, thanks, Jerry Mckinnen. Be sure to follow him and the rest of the guys at TigersMLReport.com and the Motor City Metrics podcast. Great stuff there from them. After the break, we're going to turn our attention to football. We're going to talk to former Lions linebacker Ken Fantetti about his career and his thoughts on the modern-day Lions and what he's up to now. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're happy to bring on Ken Fantetti. He's a former linebacker for the Lions in the late 70s, early 80s, and now he's a current coach, and he's up to a bunch of interesting things here, artist, and so we're going to talk to him about all that. But how you doing today, Ken?
Oh, I'm doing great. How you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show here. It's always good to get the takes from former players because, you know, I'm interested. I'm always interested in the difference between how it was, you know, with players that played a little bit ago compared to now, because football for the players, it's always all season. You have to train in the off season. You have to be ready, all of that. But are you amazed by how much the cycle goes with the NFL now? Because the news is all season now. You have so much attention on the combine and on the NFL draft. The news never dies down. We went right from the Super Bowl to, okay, who are we gonna keep on the team? Who are we gonna draft? And it's a year-round experience now.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, the competition out there today is it's pretty high, you know, and you know, to compete, you've got to work out with the best. You got to work harder, longer, you know, get faster, stronger. You know, it takes time. It really does. And, you know, everybody's trying to get that edge. And, you know, when you're thinking about playing against some of the greatest players in the world, you better take it seriously, you know, because everybody else is, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, and I'm curious what were the differences? You were a highly rated college player out of Wyoming. You had a great career there, and you were drafted fairly high by the Lions. What was the pre-draft process like then? Obviously, it was much more compressed than it is now.
Right. Well, we didn't have the big fancy combines, that's for sure, but. I mean, they did fly us to cities, and they did a lot of the same workouts that they do now, but it wasn't a group gathering. It wasn't a high media thing. It was, you know, we had 3 or 4 of them around the country, but yeah, it was a lot different back then. That's for sure.
So you had 3 or 4 gathering points to do the pre-draft process?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So how was that divided up?
Well, it was divided up by teams. Like if I went to Philadelphia, and it was not only for the Philadelphia Eagles, but it could have been for teams that were in the close vicinity. There was always 3 or 4 different teams that were evaluating us. So you might go to Philadelphia, and you might be represented by maybe New York Jets, New York Giants, Philadelphia, that kind of thing. And then, it was definitely not a, 30 or 31 team exhibition, that's for sure. So we had to do it like 3 or 4 times. And back then, a lot of the, if they were really serious about drafting you, they would come to your college and do the same workouts that they do at the, the combines. So it was more of an individual thing more than a collaborative effort on the whole NFL,
So more focused on the pro day type thing. Obviously, that's become more of a thing now too. But kind of the individual college pro days, those were more common back then to get the information from.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I just pulled up your draft year here because you were taken 37 overall, which is high, especially for a linebacker. And I wanted to see where you were in the linebackers here. And that was a year where a linebacker was actually taken first overall. I didn't remember that.
Who was that?
That was Tom Cousineau.
Oh, yeah.
You might have to help me with that. I don't really remember him very well, I have to say.
He was good. He was. I think he played at Ohio State, actually. But he was good. I knew him. I played for the Lions for my first 7 years, and then I went to Cleveland Browns. That's when Marty Schottenheimer was the head coach down there, and Tom was down there. Tom Cousineau was a linebacker down there, so I did know Tom. He was a good linebacker.
Oh, so you guys actually ended up uniting there by the end of your careers.
Yeah. Yep.
How long did you play for Cleveland?
Actually, I just went through a preseason with them. And, Marty Schottenheimer had asked me to come down there. Marty Schottenheimer is actually the guy that drafted me to Detroit Lions. Back in '78, he was just starting his coaching career. And he was a linebacker coach in Detroit. So he was the one that brought me down to Cleveland. We were pretty good friends. He kind of took me under his arm and taught me a lot about playing linebacker, and his knowledge of the game was extraordinary. And it was a privilege to play for him.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize he was the one that basically had the hand in drafting you because, I think a lot of Lions fans are thinking, hey, we could have used him as the head coach after being the linebackers coach because he was a pretty darn good head coach, too.
Yeah, he was. He had a very, very good mind for the game of football. He was very creative, and he understood the game probably better than anybody I ever knew.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about some of your influences here because you have Schottenheimer. Obviously, you played for several different coaches through college and the pros. Who were some of the other ones at the player and coach level that were influences on your career, whether they were people you emulated when you were younger or people that kind of took you under their wing, like you said with Schottenheimer? Who were some of the other guys in that category?
Let's see. There was, some of the people I looked up to as far as growing up back in my day. It was guys like Dick Butkus playing for the Bears. I didn't know him personally, but he inspired me for playing linebacker. That's for sure. I wanted to be just like him, but I wouldn't say I was even close to that. But he was good. He just as a kid, I idolized him, and he was the main guy. But I had some real good coaching at the University of Wyoming, where I ended up playing college ball. And one of our linebacker coaches there was Jim House. He was an All-American linebacker at the University of Wyoming and played in the Sugar Bowl back in the early 60s. But as far as his ability to teach the position, he was he was really, really good, and he definitely had an influence on me. He was very encouraging and very much an inspiration, to my career. And, he was the kind of guy that he'd encourage you every day, and he really cared about his guys, and it was definitely a big influence on my career. And he was one of the guys that said, "Hey, you got to keep working because you got a really good shot at playing the pros." And he would remind me of that, quite frequently, and it was an inspiration.
Well, yeah, and we need people like that along our journeys because, yeah, sometimes other people have to believe in you before you can believe truly in yourself. As far as it's like you're talking about with Buckiss and other people. Well, I wasn't on the level of him. Well, hardly anybody was on the level of Dick Buckiss. I mean, you had a great career in your own right, but yeah, you can see other people like that and try to compare yourself. But sometimes you got to have somebody believe in you and then say, yeah, you can. You may not be convinced you can play at the next level, but I am, and you need to be in order to get to that level.
Yeah, the more support you have that way, definitely the better your chances are of being who they're telling you can be, and then, like you say, it just comes down to a matter of believing in yourself and believing what other people are telling you about yourself, and it comes together if it happens like that, and that's surely what happened to me. I mean, I couldn't have done it, on my own. That's for sure. I was very fortunate to have some good coaching and guys that could get in your head in the positive, frame of mind, and that's what it takes. It's not always self effort. It's a group effort. That's football,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Now I was looking at the draft order, and then I was looking at the rosters from back when you played with the Lions. Who were some of the teammates that were closest that you were closest with, and that were most impactful on your career there?
Well, do you remember Keith Dorney? He was a All-Pro.
I do.
Offensive.
Yeah, he was the first round pick the year you were taken, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
He was first and I was second, and so we roomed together and buddied up, but he was a real strong leader, and we encouraged each other really, but he was a real good influence on me, and we were just trying to make the team at that time. Yeah, you probably remember Eric Hipple.
Yep.
Hip was our quarterback, and he came in, I believe, the year after me, but we were pretty close friends, and he always had a real positive attitude, real good outlook on the game, and a real, we kind of talked to each other, and we were able to help each other and help the team. He was a team leader on offense, and I was kind of the team leader on defense. So we talked quite a bit about where we wanted to go and where we wanted to be, and he definitely had the right mentality to play quarterback, and he took us quite a ways, really. Along with Gary Danielson, and Gary was always a real nice guy too. But he was closer to my age, Hipple was, and so we just kind of hung together. But there was, we had a pretty good team back then. We won the Central Division a couple of years, and we got into the playoffs. But we had a pretty strong team. We were just probably one or two players away from really going to the next level.
Oh yeah. That was an underrated team back then, and I want to talk more about those guys that you were mentioning here and that era. But we got to take a quick break. But stick with us. We'll come back with Ken Fantetti here in a minute, and you're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Happy to return here with Ken Fantetti from the Lions here, and he's telling us about his time frame there. I was just talking with my producer in the break, Ken, because you hit on two names. I'm actually trying to get both of those guys on the show. So it's funny that you mentioned Keith and Eric, because Keith wrote a book that I wanted to talk to him about. And Eric, actually, I had Eric Kramer, who was one of the quarterbacks, as you know, that succeeded Hipple, and Eric Hipple, I know, was very involved in Eric Kramer's journey. So I feel like that would be a popular name of the players in that era. If you said, hey, who was one of the most influential guys, who was one of the teammates you were closer with, that I asked Eric Kramer that same question, and his first answer was Eric Hipple.
That's funny. Yeah.
So he's
that doesn't surprise me at all, but yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, he's hopefully I'll get connected with him here. But yeah, that's interesting. That was a good era. I feel like that was an underrated era. One of my other producers, Rex here, pointed out, talking about how you guys had a lot of good momentum, and like you said, you're a couple players away, and then obviously you had the original number 20. But the people from my era remember number 20 being donned by Barry Sanders, but there was a different guy with the initials BS that was great wearing that number, and it was, of course, Billy Sims.
Right. Yep.
And if he hadn't gotten hurt and he was able to continue, he might have been able to stick with things. But yeah, it's fun to talk about the old days and stuff. But I do want to talk about what you're up to now, because you've got some interesting things going. You were talking about coaches that have influenced you, and now you have become a coach yourself, influencing the youth in your area there.
Yeah, it's been fun run. I'm coaching high school football in Loveland, Colorado, and we're the Thompson Valley Eagles, and we won the state championship last year. So we're pretty proud of our team, proud of our guys. They really stuck together, and we pulled through and won a championship. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, it was fun. We had some setbacks, but we managed to pull through and win it all. So it was fun. It's fun bringing these guys together like that. I was at a school that hadn't been to the playoffs for the last 20, 25 years. And so even to get to the playoffs was a big deal for these guys. But it just came down to, talking to these guys, having them believe in each other, trust each other, believe in each other, and get the job done. And they just pulled together, and we went all the way.
Yeah, that's great. When did you start coaching there?
It's been 3 years ago.
Okay, so that's a pretty quick turnaround then. Yeah.
We actually we've been in the playoffs for 2 years, but we were 14-0 this year. We didn't lose a game. Our defense was the number one defense in the state of Colorado. We had less than a touchdown a game scored against us, so that was a pretty significant impact on our season. Which of course I was proud of that. I had a helping hand in that, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah, not that you couldn't coach offense, but that had to be that had to be your focus, I would assume, that defensive number, because I was reading about this the other day, and we all know this to be true, but it's true in a lot of sports where, that offense can be inconsistent. This is true with football, basketball, whatever. Football, you can, if you have consistent defense, I mean, there's obviously it's an old adage, but the adage defense wins championships is true for a reason, because that's the thing that you can be most consistent about. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get hit for a stray touchdown here and there, but to keep it to basically under a touchdown average means you guys were on top of it all year.
Yeah, we really helped our offense along, that's for sure. We had our starting quarterback got hurt, and we had to bring in a freshman quarterback, and so that was quite the challenge. It was He was young and green, but he has a really good arm and really good sense for football. His dad played quarterback at Colorado State University, so he's got some natural talent, you know, and he's got a great arm. So, yeah, we were blessed to, you know, have him in the waiting, you know. He was next up, and he stood up and did what he had to do.
That's awesome. So you said he's young, so he's going to be at the helm here this year? What's the outlook like this year here?
We're still looking pretty strong. We've lost a few seniors, but we've got some young kids coming up that are working real hard, and you know, I think we're going to be just fine. Really, we just got to stick together and see what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and capitalize on our strengths.
Well, clearly, since you got there, that's turned things around. So I'm sure it's on the upswing here for you. But I do want to talk about the other thing that you've been doing here in your free time since football, because this is something that's always interested me about athletes, because you have to be so focused on your craft, because football is a year-round sport, as we talked about. You have to be always training. It's very intense. It's very hard on the body. You need permanent dedication to it while you're doing it. But you're also done. We talked about this earlier, but you're done by age 40 usually, unless you're maybe a kicker or Tom Brady, and we only have one of those. So there's a lot that goes into it, but then presumably and hopefully you have a lot of life after that to then fill with different activities and find different crafts. And you're used to being at the top of your craft when you're a football player, and you have chosen an interesting craft and one that you're good at, because we've actually commissioned Ken to do a piece for the show, because he now does woodworking, and that's his artistry medium now that he's finished with his pro career. So I want to talk about that with you a little bit here.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So how did you get into that? How did you decide? Was that something that you had always wanted to do and football just got in the way, or you just said, okay, I've got it. I need a hobby, a passion now that I'm done with football, and I want to get this going?
Yeah, you could say that. I've always had a passion for artwork. You know, I've done a lot of sculpturing, not so much painting, but I like working with wood, and I do a lot of, right now I'm doing laser printing. A lot of my pieces are wildlife, which I incorporate, of course, with lions. I've got some nice pieces with lions standing on the rocks and the city of Detroit in the background. And I try to always put some positive sayings on the pieces just to remind people how strong the lions are. I put some things on my pieces like, danger, lions in the area. Lions rule in this country. But I try to keep my theme as, powerful pieces, just like the lions, and it's kind of reflective of my personality. So a lot of my pieces have lions, I do eagles. Of course, I've done some with University of Wyoming. I played there, and I'm actually, of course, I'm a fan of Josh Allen's. Even though he plays for Buffalo, I wish he played for Detroit. But I've got a buffalo that he's jumping over, and it's kind of a cool piece. But yeah, I'm incorporating a lot of NFL pictures onto my pieces, and I also incorporate some wildlife alongside the picture. It's actually on the same piece, but so I incorporate wildlife in my live action photo shoots. And I've got some pictures like of me tackling Walter Payton back in the day. So I can merge a real lion with a real picture. So I can add a lion into the picture, helping me tackle Walter Payton, that kind of thing. But I get pretty creative. I've always been pretty good at it. So
yeah,
I've just been an intense dude. I think we talked about it a little bit, but this just kind of helps me relax and unwind, and it's just a happy place,
Oh yeah, we all need a release, and I just sent this to one of my producers, the picture that you sent me, so we can put it up on our social media. So at Sports Intel
Right.
Ryan, you'll be able to see it here and on our Facebook page, because Ken made us a piece that is kind of incorporating a lot of the elements that he's talking about, tackling Walter Payton with a lion. It's got the show and station logos on it. It's a really neat piece. I always, since my background, Ken, is sports memorabilia, I always try to get a signed card from each player, so I got that knowing that I'd have you on here. But this is a much better signed piece here. That's much much more rare. So we appreciate you doing that for us, and we'll be putting that out on social media. If people are interested in commissioning a piece or something like this, because it's a great thing for a Lions fan, somebody that grew up watching you maybe and could have a Lions piece by a former Lions linebacker, is there a best way to get a hold of you here?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me through Facebook. Just I guess friend me, and I can just message me. I can get back to you on that, or I can get you guys my email address. I don't know if that would help, but if we emailed, would that work?
Yeah, I can put that on our. You've sent that to me, so I can put that on our social media if you want to, if you're okay with that, if that's what you'd like, we can put that out there with the piece that you made.
Right. Yeah, that'd be fine. But yeah, for now, just if you could put my email on there, or if you can't do that, yeah, just friend me on Facebook, and I'll get back to people.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll put that email on there then, Ken. Appreciate you coming on, and appreciate you telling us all about this. We'll look forward to having you maybe back on closer to the season so we can talk some lines. But yeah, great stuff with the coaching and with the artwork, and we look forward to viewing the piece in person and talking to you again soon here.
Yeah, same here. I appreciate you guys getting a hold of me. I appreciate your business, and go Lions. Let's win this thing this year, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's why we got to have you on closer to the season so we can talk some lines once the roster gets finalized and stuff, because yeah, they're going to have a chance, but there's some teams like your Josh Allen reference in Buffalo. There's going to be some tough teams this year, but hopefully they can do it, and we'll have you back on to talk about it here closer to the season.
Well, that sounds great.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken.
You guys have a good one. It's been nice talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Take care. We'll talk to you again.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too. Thanks. Thanks to Ken Fantetti. Great stuff there from a former Lion here. And now we're going to complete the Detroit Sports Roundup. We're going to finish with Pistons, and we're going to talk with friend of the show, Coach Dave Dalton of the Pistons Fanatic podcast, and he'll take us through his thoughts on the season since we last talked with him. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We just had glory days coming out of the break, and this is a guy that's been watching and covering the Pistons for a long time and seen the glory days here with the bad boys and then the going to work group. But we might be hitting the glory days again here, Coach. What do you think?
Hey, Ryan, it's good to talk to you again. I just did a podcast, and recently my last podcast was Who's Got It Better Than the Pistons Fans? And we are in a great spot, man. We got these young guys that are all just growing and getting better every day, and they're already successful, and they're 23 and younger, and they got lots of talent. We got the guy that's the franchise player, Cade Cunningham, and he's one of the best leaders, in the NBA, and he can do it all. And so we're just in a fantastic spot.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you already bring up kind of a couple interesting paths to go down, because the people that believed in this team even last year, and I put you and I both in that category, you could see the possible development here. Yes, last year was a rough year with all the losses, but you could see what they were trying to do. They've got a young core that looked like it could be the core of the future. There obviously needed to be some tweaks, and they made a lot of tweaks. They replaced the coach, the general manager. We've covered all that in previous interviews, but they then layered in veterans that have worked for this team. But now it's so interesting to look at it, because one of the things that I like to look at with teams is, okay, so you've got, obviously every team has to have, because we get into the discussions too much about like a star or a superstar, and that's all kind of splitting hairs and people have to fit together. But what slots can these guys be on the team? And now you can kind of see, like, oh, our number one guy is a legitimate number one guy, and we have guys that can develop into the number two guy and the number three guy, and then we're getting down, and then we're going, wait, we have multiples in these slots here, so the team's looking a lot stronger. It's not a reach to elevate these guys, especially with that average age and age progressing them a little bit, because obviously Cade, it doesn't go without saying, because we should be talking about him. He's developing into a star underneath our eyes here, in front of our eyes, and he's certainly the number one guy, and he's playing so well, but his game is super smooth, so I think it's going to be tougher for him to get national recognition here in Detroit. It's coming this year a little bit because of the All-Star game and the All-Star nomination, but it's kind of like Tyrese Halliburton. Those guys kind of fall underneath the radar a little bit because they're maybe not quite as flashy, but they're super productive. But now you got guys like Oscar Thompson, who we're both high on, and Jalen Duren, and these guys waiting in the wings, where this team is coming together ahead of schedule.
They're way ahead of schedule. Of course, last year, I think Monty, not to just blame one guy, but Monty kind of put us a year behind schedule. We lost a year last year, and we kind of lost a year when Cade was out, missed most of the season his second year. But yeah, they're coming on strong and fast, and it's showing lots of improvement. And we're learning so much about the team. We're learning that, that a star can play with Duren. A lot of people were saying early in the year, oh, those two guys can't play together. And then things really took off when a star got inserted into the lineup. Our defense has gotten so much better, and people were talking. Our defense was, we didn't have good defenders. I mean, everybody said, we got Asar, he's an elite defender. Stu's a really good defender, and he's really stepped it up this year. But nobody else on the squad was considered above average. But our team is ranked way high defensively in the league, especially if you want to go from like January 1st. And Ivy was having a fantastic year, and he was really even peaking. He was shooting over 40% on threes. The game he broke his leg, he was like 6 for 8 on threes, I think. But he was really showing how good he could be, and then he broke his leg. But then inserting Asar into the starting lineup really kind of, things really took off then.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, because I saw that too, and that was quite obvious. And you and I, like I said, are both very high on him, as well we should be. His brother's playing very well in Houston, and he's stayed healthy, and that's the only reason that I think he's a little bit further ahead. I think these guys are really close, and they're both going to be stars in the league here. But it was kind of sad because, it wasn't because Ivy went out. I think people were making a little bit of a false equivalency there. Like, well, Ivy went out and the team got better. Yeah, well, Thompson hadn't played much, and so him getting more time was definitely a plus, especially with the defense that he brought. I think he's second in steals last time I checked since he's returned to the NBA, presumably behind Dyson Daniels, who's way ahead of everybody. But he's played very well. He's solidified that defense. He's improved his jump shot. That'll continue to get better. And it would be great to have Ivy as part of the rotation, but then other guys step their game up. Hardaway Jr., who you and I were both a little skeptical of at the beginning of the season, has returned to form a little bit and become one of the veteran leaders that this team has needed too.
Well, he has, but I'm just, not to be, we're falling in love with these guys because they have done this historical turnaround for our team, and so you just love them. And I love the way the veterans have mixed in. They brought great leadership to the team. Beasley, what joy he brings to the squad besides all those 3-point shots. But Hardaway, the thing is, I mean, he's 33 years old. He's shooting 40%, not 41%. He's shooting 40% from the field, and he's supposed to be a great three-point shooter. And he's good, and he's had some huge games that he's won for us. He's hit some late shots. He's had some games where he's made a bunch, but he's shooting 35% on threes. So my thing is, you know, he's his expiring contract. Ivy's coming back next year. You know, you put Ivy in the starting lineup and you take Hardaway out, or I wouldn't re-sign him as much as I admire him. He's exceeded my expectations, but still, he's 33. He was getting paid $16 million a year. We want to give time for Ivy to take his minutes, and then Ron Holland, man, they only play Ron like 13 minutes, 14 minutes a game, and he is really showing some stuff that he makes things happen. He's crazy on the court, and so. Yeah, that's what I think. Again, Hardaway's been better than I thought. He's brought good leadership. He plays tough, but he doesn't really get rebounds or assists or steals. He's in there for scoring, and he's shooting 40% only from the floor and 35% on threes. So, yeah, but I love this team, and I love everything they're doing, and I think Asar is just scratching the surface, and he's going to be. He needs to start, and yeah, it's exciting.
Oh yeah, and I agree with you on Hardaway. I am pleasantly surprised with what he's done this year, and if there was a situation where they could get him back kind of on the cheap, that would be fine. But like you said, you do have to look out for the minutes of the younger folks here, and obviously you want to keep Beasley long term because he's the true leader of this team, in my opinion, as far as the veterans go. Obviously Cade's the leader from that front, but Beasley's the veteran leader on this team. He clearly wants to play in Detroit. He's going to be able to cash in, but he's going to be somebody that you'll want to keep. He's still well within his prime. It feels like he's been around forever, but he really hasn't. He's just kind of bounced around, and so he's got some prime years left, and he's hitting his stride here. But yeah, that puts him in a perfect position to get Ivy back in and have some minutes available there. But yeah, this team is playing great, and you bring up a good point with the third unit. The third unit with Holland, man, when this team, on the days where the team kind of is lacking in energy, which isn't many these days, when you put in that energy unit of Holland combined with like Stewart and Fontecchio and Thompson, I know he's been in the starting lineup more, but if you get a combination of those guys on the court at the same time, the opposing teams don't know what to do with that, because it might not be the prettiest brand of basketball every time, but their defensive intensity and what they do putting pressure on the other team is fun to watch. I'd put Sasser in that group too.
Well, they turned things around in quite a few games when the starters were sluggish. But going back to what you said, Beasley's 28. Again, so there's the thing. Hardaway's 33. Beasley's 28. He wants to be in Detroit. He leads the NBA in three-point shots made. And I'm hoping that we can get him for the non-taxpayers mid-level exemption, which is $14 million a year. I am hopeful and thinking that he will sign for that. Again, that would not put us in any cap trouble. We're already, Cade's extension starts next year, and I'm hoping Cade gets, he signed already for the rookie max extension, which is 5 years, $224 million. But if he makes All NBA, which by all accounts, I will disagree with you, Ryan. I listen to everybody's podcast, and like Bill Simmons, who I really admire, and a lot of guys are saying Cade is not just going to make All-NBA, but he's going to make All-NBA second team. So he's going to be in the top 10. Of course, that, when you talk about, there's a bunch of guys who don't qualify because you got to play 65 games. So there's some really great players that would be top 10 players. And so, yeah, he's going to make $9 million or more a year because if he makes All-NBA. So instead of $224 million for 5 years, he's going to make $269 million. But yeah, it's a fun group, and Beasley, I think, will sign for that. You never know what somebody's going to offer him, but the fact that he wants to stay here, Tobias was mediocre at best for the first 2 months of the season, but he's really picked it up, and he's averaging 14 points a game, but the last 16 games he's averaging 17 points a game, and his percentage, he's shooting 55%. He was shooting 47% of the year. It was disappointing. Everybody thought he was going to be one of those 3-point shooters, but he wasn't even really doing that for Philadelphia last year. But he doesn't shoot that great from threes. They leave him wide open in the corners, and he's not. But he's been a huge influence on the team, in the locker room, but on the court he's just really stepped it up recently. So yeah, it's got a lot of stuff going for us. Going to the playoffs this year. Yeah, I never dreamt. I said before the season started, I thought 32, we'd win 32, and I didn't think you would get you into the playoffs. The truth is, 32 wins this year would get you into the play-in, and I thought it wouldn't last year. I think the play-in, the last team got 36 wins, but now there's in the Eastern Conference, there's a big dive, for these teams that are tanking and are doing bad. But anyway, yeah, it's fun.
Oh yeah, well, and I put that in our promo for having you on the show, that we didn't think Pistons and playoffs were going to go in the same sentence. But I want to come back to a bunch of that stuff. We got to take a quick break. I want to talk about the disagreement part. I think that's about Cade being a national star, which he is becoming one. But you're not allowed to disagree with me, Dave. You're muted right now. So, no, I'm just kidding. But we're going to come back with Coach Dave Dalton after the break and continue the conversation. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Happy to come back with one of our favorites here, Coach Dave Dalton of the Pistons Fanatic podcast. I said that, Dave, when I knew your volume was down here on the board. So if you responded, I knew you couldn't. But no, I assume you mean about Cade's popularity overall, that he's getting more notoriety after the. I think he is. I agree with you on that. I just think he's always going to be somewhat underrated because of his playing style. But he definitely is getting more notoriety, especially because of the All-Star game. I think that's what's really kicked it off.
Yeah, he's not always the flashiest, and of course the referees don't give him many calls, but I would just listen to these guys I really respect, that really know the basketball, and they have Cade, they just say his praises all the time, which never happened. I mean, there was debate before the season started in the Piston community, could Cade make the All-Star team? Well, the only way he could make it is if the Pistons had some success on the court and they won games, and then also he had to play great. And then what's happened is they've blown the expectations out of the water, and had this great record, and then Cade has even exceeded expectations about what we thought. And he's 23 years old, and players hit their prime when they're like 27, and Cade's 23, and he still is going to get better. But he's already so good, but I think the national media is really giving him a lot of love, and partly the story about the Pistons, because of their big, huge historic turnaround, I think has given more attention. Big Perk said how on NBA Today about how great Cade is, and everybody, like I said, Bill Simmons and people that are on all the different podcasts are saying, Brian Windhorst, they sang the praises of Cade. So yeah, it's really cool. The hard thing is right now, the thing that I'm concerned about going even into the playoffs is teams have found out that they can double him and get the ball out of his hands, even up near. So they're playing the Hawks. Cade has like 29 at halftime, and he's doing this against Dyson Daniels, who is going to be first-team All-NBA defense, and he's a phenomenal defender. But Cade just took him to school, and so they started the second half. They just doubled him, and we just got to learn how to really attack that, and we do it pretty well sometimes. Like we can get throwing the ball up high, and then he just ducks it down to Sarr, cutting back, sliding through the back door, but it's just going to be a challenge because all these teams that want to beat us, they just want to take the ball out of his hands early. So that's going to be a challenge.
Well, and yeah, that's a good point as far as the defensive changes and on Daniels, because that was a fun game to watch. Daniels matching up, two great matchups. Daniels with Cunningham and then Thompson on Young, and both of those were great matchups, and it was a great game overall. But yeah, I feel like we haven't talked since the trade deadline, not on the show anyway, and I feel like, because it was interesting down the stretch to see the closing lineup contain Schroeder last night, and I feel like he was handling the ball a lot, and we both know that with Ivy being out, yes, that caused some more minutes for Thompson, and that was a positive, but they still needed a secondary ball handler, and clearly they wanted to emphasize that and take some of the heat off of Cade, like at the end of the last game, and give Schroeder the ball more, because he is a good closer too. We haven't talked about him on the show, but I imagine you're a fan of that addition.
Well, he's not afraid of anybody, I can tell you that. And when in international basketball, there was a big tournament, a big World Cup or whatever. He was the MVP of the world. I mean, these teams, including the United States, had all their best players there. Germany won it, and he was the all MVP. And he started out the year so good with the Nets. He was having almost an all-star type team, and then he got traded to the Warriors. And then his numbers crashed. He didn't play as well with the Warriors, but yeah, he's a good addition. Again, he's not afraid. He's got a little bit of dog in him. He gets after it defensively, even though he's small, but he has a tremendous wingspan. He started out when he first started with the Pistons. He didn't shoot well, especially from three, but he's started to pick it up lately, and he started to do better. And so it is a valuable thing to get him on the court and have him. And Asar can handle the ball and bring the ball up the court, and then try to get it to Cade too. Asar's got, and I think that Asar's probably not this year, but I think as time goes on, he's going to be a great secondary ball handler, as I think Ivy will be too. But yeah, we need to figure out how to have somebody else open up some shots and make some plays for Cade. So they can't just, Cade brings the ball up the court and they just send two at him right away at half court. So yeah, I like Shooter, and again, we got him for nothing, and that's Trajan's he stayed with this plan. I mean, he didn't go for the big kill and big, trade, and I guess we did give up a second round pick for Shooter, but those are nothing really. And so, yeah, it was a smart addition. That was the one position, and I know other teams, if they were hoping that he would, be a buyout guy that they could just sign, any team could sign. But I think that was a great move by us.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the international game, because I've been a fan of the international game for a while. My mom took me to the Dream Team tryouts in Oregon when the Dream Team played here, and ever since then I've always loved the international game and followed those guys, because I do think it tells somewhat of a story with their play here stateside. Schroeder was like that. Patty Mills was one that was like that. He was always.
I love Patty Mills.
Yeah, and he's been a very productive NBA player, and you could see that on the international stage. One of my favorite players growing up was a guy named Sarunas Jasikevičić, which is just fun to say, and that's part of the reason I like him. But he was a great player, and then he finally came over and played for Indiana, and so now it's obviously much more integrated into the NBA. You've got Luka Doncic coming over in his early 20s, and it's not the same way, but it still pays to watch the international play. So yeah, and it's paid off for the Pistons. But Coach, I want to make sure we plug the podcast and everything. We got to let you go, but we'll have you back on soon, hopefully somewhere close to the playoffs, so we can be talking playoff basketball. But make sure to tell people where they can find you.
The only place you can find me is on YouTube. It's called the Pistons Fanatic Podcast. Like I said, I got an episode I think people would like. It's called Who Has It Better Than Pistons Fans? So it's like Jim and John Harbaugh. Their dad was a college coach in football. He would always do that. They'd drive around in their station wagon and said to his family, "Who has it better than us?" And all his family said, "Nobody." And I feel I compare every team in the NBA to the Pistons, and who would you rather be a fan of? And there's not many. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to being on again, and go Pistons.
Definitely. Yeah, we love it. Yeah, thanks, Coach, for being on, and we'll have you on again soon.
All right. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks to Dave Dalton and the rest of our guests, Ken Fantetti, Jerry Mckinnen, and Jordan Orth. They were all giving us great information. Thanks to all our sponsors, Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments. We appreciate their support. And be sure to tune in to the Sports Project from 7 to 9 on Wednesday and 10 to 12 on Saturday. Tune into the Facebook page, Jethro's Facebook page, for the news on Dave Conrad and his search and everything going on with Jethro. And until then, stay informed and stay vigilant, and then tune in to us next week from 7 to 9 on Monday. And we'll talk to you next week. Have a good week.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.